Why, hello and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I am your host and guide, Zollin Ironshield, and today I want to just talk about a little bit of the new formation system for you. Real quick, fast video as fast as I can, and also we're going to what are good commander squads, right? What are good things to do? What are good things to how to think when you're setting up a commander group, right? So this is really will be helpful for person brand new to the game, playing free to play or paying money for the game. How to think, how to design your troops. What should you do with your gear with those troops? That's kind of what I want to talk about today. All right, so first things first is let's look at new armies and look at how the new formation systems work. All right, real quick to talk through it and go through it. The very first, when you click this plus, so there's a plus button down there. See that plus button? I'm at the end of the game, so I can have up to 10 armies. Early on, you can only have 2. And every group is an army is 4 formations, okay? So make sure the lingo is correct here for someone who's new. There's 4 formations in an army, okay? An army is a group that you can attack, take tiles, move around the game, that kind of stuff. The first thing you have to think about is your commander-in-chief. He will be the one right there in the front. So for example, the Witch King right there, he's the commander-in-chief of this squad, okay? But you need to design how you want to put your characters together. So the first things first is you have to think about every group is going to have the commander-in-chief. You drag and drop him, put him there, and then you click the next button, which is down here in the bottom, and you can see it right there. I click that next button. All right, now we've got this next part over here. All right, and then we need to choose a unit that is good for Legolas. Right now, it doesn't really matter too much. He's good at leading dwarves or elves usually, but technically I could put any unit I want with him, okay? So, but I'll go ahead and drag and drop some guardians right here. And then you click the little check mark, which is again right here in the bottom right corner. All right, and now you're set. You can technically use this, okay? You could go out and you could go to a tile and click march on that tile, and you could use Legolas, and he could take a 1 tile very easily and stuff, but you will be limiting your army. So it's good to do that if you need to do, go pick something up or go, mind sharpening a commander single by themselves. Mind sharpening with commanders with groups will split the XP between all 4 commanders if you have a full army. If it's one single commander, all the XP from the mind sharpening will go to that one commander, right? And in this new 2.0, you can only level up to 40 with mind sharpening and doing stuff. PvP has to be from 40 to 50. You guys all know that, right? Okay. Good information for you if you don't. But Legolas right here is basically my commander-in-chief. Now, one thing you have to think about when you're putting your army together, okay, is that there's a few things. The big one is I recommend that the commander-in-chief is units and a character that is on the tankier side. What do I mean by that? Well, basically, Legolas himself, if I click on him here, okay, so you can click directly on the commander and he'll bring you to the commander tab. You can see here he has an HP of 4,393. I have basic items on him. He has a pretty, let me go over here a second, decent command. Well, his command is actually terrible, 16. And this is his damage. His damage is very high, 27 to 32. And again, these items are adjusting some of these stats. You also have some other stats here. We'll talk about another video to go into details with these. But basically what you have to think about is you want a commander that has pretty good defense and HP as your commander-in-chief. You don't have to do this, but basically the reason is if your army attacks something and let's say one of your commanders dies, right? They won't die permanently, but are wounded where you have to heal them. I've got a battle report to show you the exact example right now. This one right here, Theoden actually got knocked out. You can see his little red health bar got knocked out right there, okay? This is really a kind of important fact because if Dane had lost his and the commander-in-chief is always here in the middle, right? I talked about this in my battle report review video. What will happen is your army will have to just go back to base or get a sent re-healing. They will not be able to function without the commander-in-chief being alive, okay? So having the commander-in-chief be very, very tanky, so for example, my Dane has 93 defense and almost 8,000 HP, okay? Compared to Thorin, who has 6,863. He's still very tanky. If you have a Thorin Oakenshield, he might be your ideal frontline for your commander-in-chief. But for this example, Dane is like my tankiest commander, okay? So I'm using him. you can see my Gimli's not even nearly as tanky as Dane, and neither is Dwalin. So that's why I'm using Dane as my frontline commander-in-chief, because then he won't get killed as easy, right? So that's kind of important, all right? So another thing that is really important, all right, is when you're building your armies, is thinking about how you want to set up your squad. What is their goal? So there's a couple different kinds of things. There's commanders that do heavy physical damage. There's commanders that do focus damage. Focus damage can be fire damage and poison damage as well. But focus damage is usually the magical damage. You can usually know, a commander will say what kind they do when you click on them and go to their portrait, right, or their tree. You can see here he does physical damage with this ability to enemy formations, physical damage, right? So that's kind of how you can look and find out. Versus, like, let's say I dropped in Galadriel, right? With Legolas as another commander. She does focus damage, right? And focus also will increase your healing, usually. Depends. Some things will also say in the parentheses what they're upgraded by, right? So they'll be like, oh, increases from the defense stat, increases from the attack stat, increases from like that kind of information, right? Again, attack stat is this one, and this is the damage stat. They are different, okay? Don't get too confused by that. They are different. This one just focuses, this determines the ability to inflict all types of damage. This one pretty much only does physical, versus the focus stat, which I'm going to move so you can see it, the little brain there. It increases the damage of poison burn, reduces the amount of damage taken from those kinds of things too, okay? So those are kind of things. We're going to get, I don't want to get too much. I can do more broken down videos for you later. I don't want you to get too confused on this. But basically what you want your main goal to be is think about what do you want your commanders to do? There's also commanders that heavily focus on buffing their troops, all right? So, for example, this Witch King squad, this squad I have right here is a perfect example. I've designed it to be buff my units. Right now it's for siege, because that's why they have a bunch of alchemists. But if you look at the Witch King, he has a bunch of abilities that will buff his units. You see this one? It buffs Uruk-hai, orcs, trolls, evil men, and gives them follow-up, right? He also has some other ones here. He has some focus damage ones as well. But right now, mainly I have him to buff my troops with the Black Captain. You can see here I actually have the wrong one on right now, but that's not important. I would use Black Captain if I was doing this squad as a buffing my troops squad. But then at that point, you could just put in a commander that does damage, or if you want to focus fully on your units, I put on some other commanders that are designed to buff units. Look at this guy. If you go into his portrait, he's got Morgul Lieutenant. He buffs orcs, Uruk-hai, and trolls. And look at this one. He also buffs units based on his attack stat. All right, the attack stat. He can buff 2 units. So again, he's upgrading and defending units. And then if we go over here to Gorbag and we check him out and look at his stats, you'll see he also has a buff for he has a heal squad, and then he's got this, the Watchman of Sirith Ungol. Attack of 3 allied orc formations goes up. Okay, again, orcs. Defense of orcs goes up. All right, 3 squads. And if you notice, all of these affect more than one squad. 3 allied orc formations, right? 3 orc formations. And mind you, when it comes to the naming of things, we have found out that if it says formations without putting units after it, it will mean it'll affect the other commanders too. So if we have other orc commanders, they will also get affected by this in those other formations. Okay, good to know. And if you notice, oh, look at that. I've got 2 other orc commanders, right? The Nazgul's the only one that's not an orc. And then if we go over to this guy and check him out, Grishnak. He has a buff, which Warlord, which buffs orcs and Uruk-hai. You see what I'm doing now with this squad? You get it? Does that make sense? Okay. So that's kind of the goal. Now, another thing to think about when you're building that is, what else should I do? What should I do with the commander's items, right? Well, if you're going to be focusing on units like this, you want to get commander items that will buff the units. So for example, I'm using this Trapper's Hood, okay? Unit attack +6. Don't worry about the siege thing right now. If you're going to really be focusing on a damage build, you're going to want to not use the siege buff probably. I'm using this squad to siege right now. But if you notice here, the command is 35 on this. Command, look what command does when you look at the stat. It makes your damage of your army dealt do more, at least the formation, his formation, and also to receive less damage, okay? So that's the goal of this item. Buff the units +6 and give that 35 command to get the damage increase and damage reduction, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. He also has something that I believe scales. See, he also does more orcs than Yorukai. It's crazy. Defense. Right here. Okay, Survivor. See how it says effects modified by the defense stat. So let's say I have one item that I'm like, well, you know, that's going to buff 3 of my formations. Maybe I should give something that gives more defense. Well, look at this. See, the commander's defense stat +3, right? Again, commander's defense stat +3, right? I look for things that would commander's defense stat +2, unit attack +3. Do you see what I did there, right? That's kind of was my goal. Again, he's more of a leftover character. I didn't give him all of my best items, but that is the kind of thought process you have to have as you do this, okay? Same thing with the Witch King. You can see I have the Mirkwood Bow. Gives unit attack and commands, right? Trapper's Hood, unit attack and commands. This one, I gave him focus on this one because he technically gets focus damage too. Unit attack, focus, attack. Some things you have to think about for them too. The Witch King they do damage themselves, right? But that's the kind of stuff to think about when you're making your formation. And now let's say where you're making a formation that's heavy damage. Are you making like my Gimli formation and Dane formation? As you can see here, what I built with them is they've gone full. I've done full items to buff them. All right, so all of these items are just to kind of buff my commander and make him absurdly do damage. They're not really there to buff my units. I mean, look at that item. That does nothing for my units, right? Because my commander gets more damage stat, he gets more attack stat, which is the 48, and he gets more defense. It's all for commander. See the parentheses commander? If it has units in front, it's units. If it's commander, it has commander, okay? So, and even the units I'm having him use, Shire Protectors, they have a buff that gives my commander a chance to do more damage too, okay? So that's why they're on him. And then as you can see here, when it comes to my same thing, he's more of a damage dealer though, and he's got like Durin's Blood, which is so much damage. They're all just there to do damage. And if you look at this battle, I'll show you this battle report. As you can see, commander's damage overall was 235,000. My units was 43,000. All right, pretty simple. So you can see I'm focusing on making my commanders tankier. I also give them tankier units, right? So I give these guys Swan Knights, the Shire Protectors to make them do more damage, and then these goats are also to help penetrate some stuff, and he gives some bonuses to dwarves, so that's why I gave him goats. Also, you could just give them all guardians. That's good too. Guardians are very tanky. Sometimes I just do that. I'll just give them all guardians. So really it just depends on what you want to do for that setup. And again, if you have an army that's focused on, here's another example, an army that's focused on unit battle, okay? As you can see here, if I go into this battle report, you can see that my units did 130,000 damage, my soldiers damage, and my commanders only did 54,000, okay? So this team that I have is pretty much, my Eomer will do a lot of damage, but if you look, the commanders do almost none. They only did 2,000, his units did 42,000. He did 1,000, his units did 35,000, right? 2,000 did 34,000. You kind of get the point, right? But it doesn't mean you can't mix and match, right? Because my Eomer did 48,000 and his units only did 18, right? So I designed him to do damage by himself. So you can mix and match. But Eomer also has an ability that synergizes extremely well with my other stuff. He has Arid Leader, okay? And Arid Leader synergizes extremely well with Ally, okay? So that's why I kind of put them all together. So they're all buffing. And then if you look at their items on my other characters, Eomer's items are pretty much for him to do damage. They're based on commander damage. But if you look at Denethor, he's got Wizard Fireworks, unit attack +18, command 70, Sharp Blade, which does affect your commanders too, but it affects your units too, +20 attack. So I'm giving, this item right here is giving +38 attack, right, to his units. You see what I'm doing there, right? Again, same thing with Mirkwood Bow. Same thing's happening. Now, Sharp Blade is only a flat 20 across all items, so that Sharp Blade is because of all 3 of my items have it. So it's not giving 20, 20, 20, 20. It's giving 20 flat from the Sharp Blade. But the other things are all stacking, like the 16, the 18 unit attack, and the 6 unit attack, 12 unit defense, right? That kind of stuff. And the commands are all stacking, that have these ones that have command on them. So his command, Denethor, is very, very high. It's down here in the corner. He has a command of 313, but compared to like my Imrahil, who has a command of 435, he's doing 30% reduced damage and 30% increased damage for his formation. Pretty scary. And again, you can see command, unit defense. This, I put an evasion on him because he's kind of have my tank units. Yeah, you guys get the point. I think I've covered it where you can kind of, that's your thought pattern. You can, again, mix and match. You could have a commander that does physical damage, a commander that does focus damage, and 2 commanders that buff units. Or you can make those last 2 commanders that help buff your commander's damage, right? A really good combo right now is like the Bjorn and Dane, which do massive physical damage, and then you put Gandalf the White with them that does increased makes the enemy take increased damage for the first 3 rounds with White Rider, and then they do massive damage. And you put Sauron in there, and Sauron debuffs the enemy team and then buffs his team for the commanders and the units technically, but for helping the commanders out. So you can do all sorts of things like that. So keep that in mind. Keep thinking. Keep strategizing. That's what makes this game fun. That's what people think is fun about it. Again, probably a more niche game. Not everyone's gonna like that kind of strategizing, but I enjoy it, and I know many other hundreds of people that do it with me enjoy it. So hopefully that helps you out. You guys have a great day in Middle Earth. Oh, look, it's Brody. Hey, Brody. There's my sheepdog. You guys have a great day in Middle Earth. Again, thank you to my wonderful Patreons for the support. Subscribe button's there. And if you want to get some extra gems and also support the channel, there's a link down there that's to the official RiseToWar to get some extra gems if you purchase it through their thing there. All right. You guys have a good one. I'll see you in the next episodes of Voice of the Rings. Right, Brody? Yeah. He's like, yeah, right, guys, right.